Yeah. Getting money like cashier. Get the money like a cashier. Customer clientele. I was broke, that was last year. Getting money like cashier. Get the money like a cashier. Benjamin, nothing less. I was broke, that was last year. Don't change 'em. I never switched up. Been down to day one. Stay social. People change them.
Hello, and hello.
Hey, everybody.
Welcome to the show, to DBT tonight. My name is Marcus. Who we got on the phone?
My name's Kevin Cox. Hey, everybody.
We got Kevin in the background. I'm Stefania.
And I think we got a couple other folks in the background. Who else we got in the background? Hashem? Is Hashem there?
No, but there's Short Texas. Introduce yourself.
Michael Carter, good afternoon. Actually, good evening. Good evening.
All right.
But I think we have some guests today, too.
That we do. I just want to make sure we can still hear Kevin. We can't see him. Can we hear Kevin?
Yeah. I'm here.
Okay.
I was singing a theme song for Carter for Kids. 1877 Carter for Kids.
What's that about? That's crazy. Wait a minute. Hold on. Carter for Kids. What is that? Some kind of automobile commercial?
And I see Hashim's name.
It's a nice jingle.
Oh, Hashem disappeared. So anyway, we're gonna get started. Stefania, why don't you go ahead and introduce our guests?
Oh, okay. It's up to me, huh? I love that. Are they in the background there? Well, never mind. So tonight, I don't know if you are our viewers, if you watched last week, but we had a very good show. So we are having the other half of that conversation on tonight. So tonight we have Kristen. We have Kristen on with us and Meredith Phillips. So welcome, Kristen Westerberg and Meredith Phillips. Let's see. Kristen, you are the caucus chair, correct, for the Democratic Party in Arapahoe?
Yeah, for Arapahoe County.
For Arapahoe County. And Meredith, tell us a little bit about yourself as well.
I'm the first vice chair, so I'm basically Kristen's second command.
Okay, got it. I love it. Well, welcome, both of you. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. So you guys obviously saw the show last week and had a lot you wanted to say. So for those who don't know, last week we had Adam Fung on, who was running for an elected office here. On the show, he dropped out. And we also had Candace on, who is getting his support. So tell us, where do you stand with either one of these?
So one of the tenets in the party is that we support Democratic candidates, and that's not just something that is kind of our mission statement, but it's also in the rules. So we are fully behind Candace. We are fully, as a party, we're fully behind every Democrat that runs for office. It gets a little complicated when they're nonpartisan races and when there's more than the number of Dems for each seat. But those are in our rules. And as far as Adam, I hope that he is getting the help and the support he needs for his mental health, and that he can open a new chapter in his life.
Okay. Yeah, I know how hard it is. Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I know how hard it is to run a race. I've been with a lot of candidates. I am married to someone who was a candidate. So I understand the toll it takes on you personally and mental health. So you have to do what you have to do to protect yourself and make sure that you're doing what's best for yourself and your family. And Adam made a decision that he needed to make. So I agree with Kristen. I really hope that he gets the help that he needs, and I hope this is going to be beneficial for him.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure he appreciates that support. But there was a sticking point in our conversation last week that really kind of got you guys wanting to come in and share your voice. There were some accusations that were levied. And so one of the things that they talked about was he felt like he was forced into running.
Well, Kristen, and just back it up.
Okay.
Go into the, I don't want to say recruitment, but the contact and the process that you went through with Adam, all the way from the initial contact to, I guess, whatever happened last weekend.
Yeah, so Adam has been on my radar, or like on the party's radar, for a couple of years now, because he had discussed running for school board on a previous year and then didn't end up running at that point. But I think it was either December or January that he was one of many people who were interested in running for at large. So in nonpartisan races, it is a strategic benefit if we have the number of candidates for the number of seats, because then it allows the party and the party infrastructure to fully support those candidates. So someone like myself can hold fundraisers, someone like Morgan Carroll can hold fundraisers. We can use like HD officers to knock doors, etc. So in, I believe it was beginning of January, we had a meeting with essentially, I think the height of it, there were like 7 candidates or maybe 8.
6 or, I don't think we got to 8, about 6 or 7, yeah.
Okay, so potential candidates, people who had expressed interest in the race. And actually, if I back up even further, one of the things I will say is we've lost Democrat-friendly districts to Republicans when we split the vote. And so my goal was to facilitate a conversation between possible candidates that they could fix amongst themselves, or they could decide amongst themselves, like strategically, if it made sense for only 2 people to run, which I still maintain that that is the most strategic thing for us to do. And then 2, if we were going to, if they were going to pursue with the support of the party that avenue, who they wanted to run. And that conversation spanned age ranges. It had a lot of diverse voices. It had establishment folks from like to activist folks and kind of everything in between. And during those meetings, Adam said, you know, I'm running. And based on that conversation, a lot of folks who were in that room supported him. And one of those folks even joined his kitchen cabinet. And so the kitchen cabinet's kind of like who you go to for political advice. And then throughout the year, and I would say specifically around the July timeframe, July is really hard. And it's really hard every election cycle, whether it's partisan or nonpartisan, because everyone goes on vacation. It's hot. Like your volunteers don't want to get involved. They don't want to knock doors. They don't want to call. And it's kind of when all campaigns go into crisis mode because they don't feel like they have enough money. They don't feel like they have enough support. And Adam went through something very similar. And at that point, everyone, I felt, it's my perspective that we met multiple times, and not just me and him, but like his supporters, and wrapped him with love and tried to like get him through that tough spot. And as of August 1, it was my understanding that he was still in it to win it. Clearly that changed last week on your show without any notice or conversations beforehand. And I think that that's hard for his supporters and his staff both. But I mean, I really do mean it when I say I wish him well. But I just like, at the end of the day, the county party is 5 unpaid volunteers with little time and little resources. So we do what we can to the best of our ability to support people. But a lot of these campaigns, you know, you have to build it yourself and build a strong campaign. And the party helps when we can, but a lot of times we can't. And I feel like Adam felt that pressure, and there were some key endorsements that didn't come through, and that's really unfortunate.
And do you guys mind if I jump in real quick?
Okay.
Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, Kevin.
Hey, Kevin.
Hey. Yeah, sorry, I couldn't quite find a place to park, so I'm just the audio right now. So it kind of does, like it really reminds me of when I ran for school board, because I ended up having to change what race I was in. When you mentioned being strategic and knowing, you know, that if you split votes, you're just going to lose the seat. That was the case in Aurora City Council for Ward 3, right? So originally I was in that race, and how many Democrats were in that race? 4 or 5, I think.
It was 4 actually.
It ended up being it ended up being 4, right?
Yep.
Nikita Ricks joined in after I did. So it ended up being 4. I knew I was the third. It was a long shot, and then the fourth jumped in. It's like, this is really going to be a bad look for all of us in the same party, splitting our vote 4 ways. So, I mean, I understand the strategy aspect of it, and even if you wanted to bow out, I think for me, it kind of struck a nerve as it's more about how you do it. So if you're going to do that, you know, after people have requested to know, like, hey, are you going to be in this for the long haul? You have volunteers knocking doors. Some of these volunteers are going through many struggles in their own life. Out of appreciation to them, I would prefer it be earlier than later. And at the same time, recognizing all the stresses, myself having fallen victim to a lot of stress just from all the campaigning and politics itself. It's a very tough position to be in. So
yeah,
help people understand what it's like when you want to support some individual, but your hands are kind of tied by being from the party and what you can and what you can't do.
I can speak to a little bit of that. You said a lot of important things there, Kevin, so I really appreciate you bringing that up. So I've worked, like I said, with a lot of candidates over the past 5 or so years. I've been in professional politics, and I have never known a candidate who hasn't gone through a point of wanting to quit simply because it's so hard. When you don't, the work that you're doing doesn't have immediate payoff. When you're talking to people on doors, you don't know if they're going to vote for you or remember you. You might get donations, and that usually feels good, but then you're spending that money to reach out to more voters, and you don't know what that's going to look like, whether it's going to be persuasive, whether people are going to find your message compelling or not. And you're going to have a hard time, especially in a local race when there's no polling at all. You have a really hard time feeling that you're going to have a really strong chance at victory until the votes actually come in. And that's the first time you get to see what your work has actually gotten is on November. In this case, it'll be November 2nd. And to do this correctly, especially in the cases we're in Aurora, where we are up against the most money that's ever been spent in an at-large race with some incredibly professional and extremely scary candidates on the other side. They're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy these elections, and they're doing it with, you know, professional mailers, professional digital, professional videos. You have to start relatively early in order to be able to bank enough doors and have enough conversations one-on-one with real people, real Aurorans. Because keep in mind, Dustin Zvonek raises $100,000. That's not coming from Aurora. That's coming from across the country, from a conservative dark money network that wants to make sure that Mike Kaufman can enact the exact policies that he wishes here. But we don't have a dark money network. We have knocking on doors and shoe leather. So we have to have thousands of conversations, and that takes time. So if we don't start in February, we're not going to be able to actually catch up on that one. So that means you're working from February to November without any check on the quality of your work, and that is a difficult mental place to be in. So I have never met a candidate who hasn't had that crisis of faith somewhere in that phase. And so my training is about how to get people through that crisis. How do we keep them on board? Yeah.
I have a question because
go ahead.
I watched it from afar.
Mm-hmm.
So part of Adam's kind of answer to why did I wait was, you know, Candace becoming a viable candidate. The reality, I mean, if the individual believes they're a better candidate, and Adam believes that Candace was a better candidate, if there's a better, more viable candidate out there that has more support, why would the party be upset with that more viable candidate being pushed forward? I think what everybody was kind of saying was, you know, instead of splitting the vote, why don't we get the candidate that is more viable, more support? Why aren't we pushing that candidate forward? And even though we're mad at Adam, what he has done is stop that narrowing of the focus and stop that splitting of the vote. Isn't that what we want?
Yeah.
Well, in the case of having two candidates, absolutely. That is the right spot to be. But the difference is between a candidate who has started working in February versus a candidate who's starting to work in September. And that is an important difference in amount of resources that are collected, deployed, and voters contacted. That's the main issue and the main question. Is the overall calculus that our chances are better or worse after Adam dropped out and Candace stepped in? I don't know. I have no really good way of knowing. That's going to depend largely on Candace. If Candace can mount a vigorous campaign where she can hit all of those doors, she can raise the money to reach out to those voters, have the conversations she needs, and get the volunteers out there to bring that support, then we're going to have a really good chance in November. And I'd love to see Candace make that campaign, and I'd love to work with her on it. And
not to belabor the point, but we know that's what Candace is going to do. We know that's not what Adam was going to do. Mm-hmm. Ergo, we have a more viable candidate now because of what Adam did.
Well, so I don't think you can necessarily say that, because I mean, I think that that's the hope, but I don't want to gloss over what Adam and Adam's campaign and what people who are on Adam's campaign did. They raised $16,000. They had already knocked on 10,000 doors. They had already written 15,000 postcards. And in a grassroots environment, that's actually pretty notable. And I don't remember, but Kevin, do you remember how many doors you knocked or how many postcards or contacts you had made during your campaign for APS? And you had the teachers union, right? So the teachers union plays in APS very heavily, but and then also Adam has, he had a lot of support from CPA, which is Colorado People's Action. He got the endorsement from the Working Families Party. He had the endorsement from, and it's actually very sad, COCO, Conservation Colorado, came out with their endorsement like 2 days after he dropped. So, I mean, now the goal and the work, I guess, that's ahead of Candace, and hopefully with our help, is to get those same parties behind her and to give her the same resources that he would have had. But I mean, I think all those things made Adam a viable candidate. And I don't think we can just gloss over the resources and the work that had already happened. And like, if you think about Aurora, it's the third largest city in Colorado. It's like half of a congressional district. If you go out to Southlands and you look east, like all of that is us. And if you go to Colfax and you look north, all of that is us. And it's every voter in between. And that's just to be frank, it's a lot of work to do in 2 months.
It's a
back, lot of
Kevin?
Work.
Sorry, I apologize, Tristan. Are you back, Kevin?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I am. Signal was dropping.
So my question to both of you is this. If Candace is running and she is a viable candidate, I heard you, Kristen, mention in the very beginning that you have access to people like Morgan Carroll who can do fundraisers, and you know, your whole mission is to put all your weight behind the Democratic candidates. What if that's the case and Adam had to drop out for health reasons? Why not, and you said it yourself that you were supporting Candace, why not bring her all those tools? You know that it's go time now. You know that this has to be done. You know that it is her name that is on the ballot. Why are we not throwing everything behind her and getting her all the tools that she needs and that are available to you so that she could be successful?
Yeah, I mean, I am happy to throw her a fundraiser. I'm happy to give her, to do all the tools. I think, part of that, campaigns have to reach out to people and ask for the help that they want, because that's the other thing is, unless there's an ask, unless a candidate comes to me with a certain ask, then, I'm a volunteer. This is my unpaid second job. And I mean, we can do all those things. I'm committing to do all those things, but part of that has to be in collaboration with the campaign.
Yeah,
and
we're not working.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And that's also the work that Candace has ahead of her. I mean, campaigns to a large extent have to build their own infrastructure, make their own asks, and do their own do their own work. So
let me get this straight. When you find out, so you in the very beginning, you know whose names are on the ballot, you know who in the room, who's in the room, who's going to be running, and at that point in time, you're saying that it's their job to build their campaign, to come to you and make the ask, instead of just saying, this is what our goal is, to make sure that we get more Democrats in office. So this is what is available to you. how can we help you?
Right. I mean, I think I send those emails out anyway. Like I sent the emails out about t-shirts. I've sent the emails out about ads in the Pat Schroeder dinner where people, like any opportunity we have, we like send out to all the candidates equally. But something like a fundraiser has to be a personal ask. And then there's the whole, I mean, I'm just going to be very frank and very honest. People will have questions about viability. And so I can host a fundraiser and I can give up to $1,000, but I'm not wealthy. So I don't have $1,000 that I can just give to Candace Bailey or to Adam Bung or to anybody. I can invite my network to come in and support her. And then people are going to make their decisions on whether they want to give. And I'll encourage people to give. I think I was at the NAACP opening and I was encouraging people to support Candace there. Like, but each individual person has to make their own decision on whether they're going to donate, whether they're going to walk, whether they're going to get fully behind that person. But as far as like everything that the party puts out, she'll be included. Absolutely.
Okay.
Sorry, I thought Kevin was. I thought I heard Kevin.
Yeah, and I mean,
No,
I
you
think
didn't hear me,
Kevin-
but I can jump in. Go ahead. What were you saying, Kristen?
I was going to say you probably have good experience with this as a candidate because you had to make those asks for endorsements, for fundraisers, for house parties, for walking.
Yes. And, you know, that's one reason why a good campaign manager is important. I did always have good campaign managers, whether it was, you know, at home or it was from the school, the teachers union. No matter what, we had people that were asking for every resource. So that's one thing. Campaign managers are needed, and good campaign managers are always better than just anything. But the stress on the candidate, I cannot repeat that enough. That is a really, really big thing, and I want to make sure that any friends of Adam's and Adam himself, if he's listening, if you guys are listening, this is not a bash on Adam session, and I do wish the best to camps as well. I want to make sure that my tone isn't, you know, negative towards, you know, the process going through as it was, because I had people ask me hard questions when I dropped out of the city council race. So I just want to make sure that people understand. I know this is it's a sword, two-sided, you know, sword. Anyway, you don't necessarily, Kristen, have all the information of who's going to be on the ballot at the beginning. At the beginning of the year, you don't know who's going to get their signatures. You don't know who's going to do the work. You don't know who's going to organize themselves in a manner to become viable. And sometimes you're supporting these people off of faith. You're taking their word for it, and you're believing them when they say, I want to do this. So it kind of puts you in a position at the early portion of the campaign of, I know this guy's politics, I know this candidate, I know this campaign, and you're trusting that it's going to work out the way you want it to. But when there's a change, what do you think as a party we could do to be able to roll with the punches so that, you know, I don't know. I don't have the answers. I know, you know, rock in a hard place, right? But what do you think as a party we could do to improve this process so these situations we can adapt?
Yeah,
I
so
can
one
take
of
that
the one of the questions in the chat is like, what network can you leverage for the right candidate? So I think like this is I don't know if that's a snarky comment, but it's a valid question because I think a lot of people don't understand what the party is. Like there's a national party, a state party, a county party, and my job is very administrative. Like a lot of the things I have to do are not sexy fun things. It's like hosting caucus and assembly and getting a delegate selection plan for to get presidential elections and stuff. But essentially under me, there's all these house districts, right? And in Aurora, we have 4 or 5 house districts who have chairs, who have members, who have monthly meetings. That stuff is publicly posted. Those are the same people that when we do host things and when those are the people I go to and I ask them to participate and I ask them to come. They're also the same people that will be saying the party will get out, hopefully if we raise enough money, we'll get out text messages that say, you know, vote for these 5 Democrats. They're the only Democrats on the ballot. And I'm very grateful. I'm very thankful that on Friday, Adam's staff was able to get his name off the ballot so it stays clean and that we don't lose Adam's votes. I think that that's really important. And so that's kind of the network that we rely on, is our house district. And that's also like, if you're planning on running or you want to get involved politically, starting at the house district level is a really good place to do that. But I'll warn you, they're just as dysfunctional as the rest of us. Like, some HD meetings end up in like fights, and we're a big tent party, and that has big tent complications. And at the end of the day, like, to me, politics is about building relationships so that people early on can trust you and can say, I know Kevin Cox. I'm going to support him. Like, I'm going to give him my money. I'm going to give him my time, because the local party doesn't have money to give candidates, like, not on a ongoing basis anyway, and definitely not for local elections. And that's complicated because of campaign finance rules. But go ahead, Meredith.
So, yeah, I wanted to address something that Kevin brought up, and then I want to address Everett's comment as well, because there's kind of a two-ended questions here. The first is, what could we do better to improve the process in the beginning, in the earlier stages of the year? And I think that's an important question, one that we're still developing. This is the first time that there's ever been a party-facilitated conversation around who ought to run in one of these contested races. The process before was no process. The process was, if you're wanting to get on the ballot, you get on the ballot, and then the vote splits and we lose at large. I mean, if you look at 2019, you look at 2017, we did not do very well at large. We got one seat out of those 4 in those 2 elections. And we know that Aurora is not a Republican-dominated city, but there's consistent Republican outcomes because of the way the process is structured. It's designed to allow the Republicans to win easily by default by having it on off-year elections and be nonpartisan. And that's a challenge that we have to overcome with organization and talking to one another. So that was why we came up with the idea of having these candidate meetings, these potential candidate meetings, talk about how we can arrange and how we can best deploy the resources we have. I think having a broader understanding of that process, have it be more widely publicized, that if you're thinking about running, here's an important informational session to understand what's going on and what is a good path for you as a community member to get on to where you can actually be a victorious candidate in the seat that you're looking for. That process may not be in the first election you're thinking about, may not even be in the second or third. I know candidates who have, like Representative Ricks is a great example. Representative Ricks ran 3 times for 3 different seats before she found the spot where she won on HD 40, and she's now a representative. And she's done a fantastic job at that. She was persistent, she stuck with it, and she found a way to make it happen over time. Our successor, PK Kaiser, is another good example of somebody who was persistent about that and found a good niche for himself where he has been a fantastic assessor for the county. So if we are able to have conversations like this for crowded races, whether that's a ward race in Aurora, at-large race, or a mayoral race, we need to make sure that we're having the conversations internally that enable people to make good decisions for themselves and understand the process to have the best candidates coming forward at the right time. Doesn't mean that everybody's running right at the same time. It means people are coming up with a plan, a strategic plan to make sure that all of our goals are met by those candidates. So we can improve that process by being more public about that later on. On the other side, Everett questioned, asked one of the questions comment, our full support behind Candace. And some of the things the county party has done in the past is create either slated literature or text programs or digital programs. We have given money in the past, depending on when we have financial ability to do so. This is not looking like that year, but and also in Aurora.
I was gonna stop you, Meredith. You keep saying in the past.
I'm talking about that. So right now, specifically, whenever we're going to put a budget together for what we can do in direct candidate support, that happens usually in the middle of September, once we know what our finances are looking like so that we're solvent for next year and we can meet all of our obligations at Caucus coming up. We have to make sure that we have our statutory requirements filled first, we can pay our rent, keep our lights on, and then we can start looking at how we can directly support candidates and what the most effective way of doing that will be.
And I will say that our capability this year is limited because Aurora passed campaign finance laws. So in cycles in the past, we've been able to write checks to candidates. We can no longer do that as the party. It's against the law.
In Aurora, specifically. We can do it in other municipalities where it's possible.
Right. Yeah. And our biggest fundraiser is this upcoming Tuesday at Industry. And even if you can't afford it, please still consider attending because We rented out a rooftop of a bar, and it's going to be a fun time. But
I'm glad you brought that up, Kristen.
Yeah.
Who's hosting that?
That's a great question. Who is hosting it? Because I believe the ball is in your court, Kevin.
Please host, Kevin.
Well, look, I would like to offer the services of Dope Black Thoughts to host. Would like to provide a few people who could provide you great services of hosting and emceeing. I myself will not be able to attend in person, but anyone in this room on this call could do it.
I'll accept on Stefania's behalf.
I don't think you
I'll
can do
accept
that.
on his behalf as well.
That's not how any of this works.
And so I think that's like another thing that I like want to pull the curtain back is like, I mean, we're not flush with cash. And Kevin and I had this conversation. I think our bank statement right now, we have $20,000 in the bank, which is not nothing. Like, that's a lot of money from working class people. And then in this fundraiser, we hope to raise another 10 to 20. If we raise more than that, then we have more options about texting and digital and stuff. But it is largely dependent on what we raise is how much we can do. And it is an unpaid volunteer organization. And I also see a question. Has campaign finance reform been suspended as a result of Coffin's lawsuits? No, not the restrictions of who can donate or the campaign limits, just certain aspects of the campaign finance reform have been struck. I think the coordination between campaigns is on
Those are
hold.
currently enjoined.
Yeah. And the party is an interesting organization to be part of. And I guess like one of the reasons I wanted to come in on here and one of the things I wanted to be clear is like Adam was an underdog candidate. And to be very frank, I was an underdog chair when I ran, like an outsider chair. And I will always root for underdogs. I will always root for Candace. The institutions are not set up for working class, diverse people to run and to win. So I don't want, I guess what hurt me the most is this idea that we tell people that they shouldn't or they can't win. I believe you can win. I want to help you be strategic. I want to get enough doors knocked, enough postcards written, enough phone calls made, enough money raised that every single candidate we put up has a good shot. Because I think also setting people up for failure is and we can do that. And you can see it in politics. You can see candidates who run, who everyone kind of laughs at and is like, haha, you have no chance, but no one will say that to their face. I think that that's terrible. And I don't want to leave that type of legacy. If you run in Arapahoe County, I want you to win. I want us to win every single election.
Bringing everything in your toolbox, your network, to that candidate so that they have an opportunity to win.
Yeah,
absolutely.
No matter. I mean, I say that because there's been, and I'm going to bring this up. There's been in the past some talk about racism within the caucus. Tell me what you've done to make sure that there's no racism in your district being exhibited to your candidates, to the candidates that are running. You're evenly supporting them. It's not based on color. What are you doing?
Yeah, so I think that's a good question. I think one of the things I want to be crystal clear in is this is America and this is an American institution and it's a political institution. Racism is baked into it. Just like racism is baked into so many aspects of our society. And then as a white person, there are potholes and there are things that I step into that I don't always understand. But I think one of the things that we have done as leaders is have conversations with people who have been harmed and people who have critique for the party. We sat down with a lawyer and a mediator and 10 community members after the 2020 cycle to take down some notes and to make some changes in our organization to address anti-Black bias and to sit with that, because unfortunately, like, people are flawed. I'm flawed, and we're going to continue. When you play big games, you're going to sometimes make big messes. And so, like, holding people accountable while still understanding that, like, it's a volunteer organization and I'm not in a position to kick anyone out or not take free labor from anybody, I think is the tightrope that we're trying to walk. And then, like, if you think about it, Arapahoe County has elected the most diverse caucus, and I would say even in the state. Like, we have 3 members of the Black Caucus. We have the first Muslim American woman. We have the first disabled veteran Latino man elected. Kevin, sorry, you had something to say?
No, I wanted to. I mean, because all the stuff you're saying is true. Okay, like when you talked about sitting down with mediators and lawyers and having these conversations and whatnot, those are good. But to me, those are a single thing. And what I like, just being an elected official, I like systems. So what I'm kind of wondering is what sort of checks and balances are being put in place by the party, or any ideas for checks and balances to be put in place so we can make sure. I'm not talking about a quota system. I know that's a slippery slope. We talk about this at the school board. It's like we have to be careful, not say it has to be this many or whatever. So not numbers based. But what sort of a system can we come up with, or can we utilize to make sure, because like you said, it's baked into the cake, and it's part of the legacy. I wrote this down in my notes, and Stefania beat me to it. So hats off to Stefania, always being a step ahead. But you talked about the past. There is a legacy of racism in the Democratic Party, and the Republicans love to, throw it in our face. But if we can we can put together some checks and balances to overcome these things that are baked in. I think that'll be more powerful than just we sat down one time, because it had to come to a head for us to sit down.
Right.
So
100%.
one of the things, do you want to take this?
Meredith. Nope.
Okay.
Go ahead.
One of the most structurally efficacious barriers to working class or diverse people getting involved in the party and involved in politics is the way that we do our most basic party functions. Specifically, I'm thinking about caucus here. There's a lot of the ways that you're kind of required or supposed to, either unwritten rules or explicit rules, where you have to go to such and such meeting at such and such time in order to be elected to go on to the next meeting at such and such time. And if you can't make any one of those steps, then that's going to prevent you from going any further and having any more say. And this really hurts, especially lower income people who can't necessarily make a meeting if they have to work, or they can't find childcare, so on and so forth. There's all kinds of barriers that get put in place that way. One of the things that I'm specifically trying to do coming up, because there's been some statutory changes and rule changes at the state party, I think that we can do a substantially overhauled version of caucus coming up that I'm hoping will increase participation across the board and boost it to unprecedented levels. I can't say too much right now without spoiling the whole thing, but caucus in particular, my first involvement in caucus was in 2016, where there was about 90 people from my precinct of over 500 people who were eligible to be there. So 90 out of 500, that was the largest I ever saw. The party was barely able to handle that many people and that level of participation. So that tells you the systems that we have, that we've inherited, are not designed to have broad-based input from the community. They're designed to have a select group of individuals who know the systems and know the power structures, and year after year continue to do the same old thing. Every caucus I've been to and run since then has had less turnout than the previous one. And it was even worse in 2020 when we had no presidential primary. So these processes, I think, are massively outdated. They were designed for a rural system, a rural society, not an urban or suburban society, where people were farmers and then came home and did caucus at the end when the sun went down. We need to design a better system that is going to represent the actual diversity of our population and actually get the input from people who otherwise have been shut out. So that's a project I'll be working on after this election, especially. Krista knows what I'm talking about. I'm hoping you'll all be able to come and see what the final product is. I'm hoping to get a caucus that is very different looking, much simpler, easier to deal with, and get more access and more say for individuals.
And I would just add to that, like, some of these things, especially on off-year elections, Like, we have thought leaders like Juan Marcano who are looking for legislative ways at the city level, so like ordinances that can fundamentally change the way we do elections. Like, there's just so much to unpack about this election cycle. Like, it's right after a presidential election, so people are burned out. Even like your hardcore politicos are exhausted. I was exhausted. We've all been traumatized by COVID, right? In one way or another, we like scraped through this year. Then it's after wards 1, 2, and 3 never fall on a mayor race year. So there's lower turnout because there is no mayor race, which drives turnout. And so the North wards always end up on a low turnout year. They're nonpartisan on off-year elections, like on off years. And so like systematically, it was not set up for Democrats, but it was also not set up for diverse people to run and to win in these election cycles. So the fact that we have put some wins together in 2017 and 2019 is historic. Like, that's the other thing that, like, in this conversation we're not talking about. Before 2017, we maybe had 1 or 2 Democrats at any given time. But like, the legacy of Aurora, specifically Aurora, is a legacy of Republicans. Like, all the issues that have come to a head in 2021 weren't systems set up by Democrats or diverse people. They were systems set up by predominantly white male Republicans, like
wealthy people. Yeah.
And then, yet, like you said, in 2021, still struggling with the same problem. I have a question that came in on a private chat that said, it sounds like you're loyal when you have long-time loyal people of color, and specifically Black people, who dedicate the work to Arapahoe County, but the atmosphere is not welcoming of them. How do you ever expect more Black people to get involved with party politics? Or is the expectation for them not to get involved after them, just to vote or whatever way they are directed by white bodies?
I don't think they expect that.
Go ahead, Meredith.
Okay. Yeah, the expectation, I don't have any expectation of any individual. I want to put that out there very, very clearly. What I want to see happen is have the actual population of Aurora more represented in the party of Aurora. I want to make sure that we look like the people that we're trying to represent. And that's going to have to be a self-selected issue to some extent. I think that the question about the atmosphere and the welcoming is probably the most salient one there, because that's the thing that can either make or break the relationship as it's forming. In order to really get name recognition, cash and clout with the people who are going to be able to link you up to endorsing organizations, raise funds for you, and so on and so forth, there has to be an element of time and relationship building that goes in there. And when, as Kristen said, flawed people, myself included, make mistakes, we can inadvertently create hostile environments. And I know I've done that in the past, and I've tried to own when I've done that and try to make amends when I've done that. That's an ongoing and personal process that cannot be, I don't think, systematized in an individual case. And so, unfortunately, Kevin, I don't have a systemic solution for that. What I do know is that we have to create an environment where, when those mistakes are made, learning can happen from everybody involved so that we can avoid making them in the future, and we can then address the harm that's been caused. Relationships are the core of this. Solidarity, especially on this side of politics, is the core of this.
Meredith.
And that means, yeah, go ahead.
What do you mean by a hostile environment?
I know I have inadvertently manifested anti-Blackness when I've been working in the party, and that's a thing that I own and I am sorry for. And I do my best to not do that, and I do my best to understand how and why that's happened, and make sure that it doesn't happen going forward.
Can you then understand the trepidation of an individual, of a Black individual coming to this party at this point, knowing exactly what you just said?
Mm-hmm. So this is a thing that happens not just in terms of anti-Blackness. It happens to me in trans cases. I have experienced a lot of transphobia in the Democratic Party. I have had hard conversations with people about that. So literally any person who has a marginalized identity is at risk of that. This is a commitment that we have to end up making to each other. And that's part of the reason I want to be able to be public about this. I tend to be more behind the scenes person, but I want to make sure that I'm being public about my commitment to trying to be better about this. And that's a commitment to every individual that walks through the door of the party office or who gives me a phone call. But that has to be one that we're sharing to each other and not just from a single individual.
Here's where you're at. I need to reach out. I don't believe waiting is going to solve it. As the party, you as Kristen Mallory, you as Meredith Phillips, you need to be reaching out specifically to people of color and bringing them in.
Yeah, I mean, I pride myself on being someone who I try not to create transactional relationships in politics. I try to create meaningful relationships in politics and bring people in. The truth, it's a non-paid volunteer position. Like, that's why I go to the NAACP. That's why I go to the Second Chance Center and help them. Like, I try to go to events in the community, introduce myself, be loving, be warm, accept the invitations when they're given. But we also are 5 unpaid volunteer people who, like, we're doing the best we can to create meaningful relationships and to reach out. And I think also that's why we're here. And just to be frank, like, the first time I met Kevin, I didn't know him, and I like ran down the street to be like, hey, there's that guy, I've heard so much about you. Like, I want to know you, right? Like, that's the environment that I want to be in. That's the environment I want to create, where people feel like they're loved and supported. But the everyday politics, the House district meetings, the administrative side, the getting ready full of caucus, it's not a fun environment. It's not. And I don't know if people want to, like, I want people to do work that's meaningful, but there is a lot of work in the party that is not meaningful. And I also don't want to waste time and talent doing the administrative stuff. Hey, Hashem.
Kevin, you're muted.
I said Hashem has entered the show. I was trying to give you your accolades.
He's also muted.
I'm trying.
We've got Hashem.
No problem.
Hashem,
Yes.
you're muted.
I got you.
So with that, Hashem, you're muted.
Hello, everybody. Sorry for the delay, but I am joining you from our furthest western state.
Aloha.
Aloha.
For those who didn't get that. Welcome, Hashem. Did you have anything that you want? Were you listening? Did you have anything you wanted to contribute?
It was, from what I was able to hear, it cut in and out, and I was able to hear a little late. But I'm just, I'm always concerned about deflection from the issues of racism, from when one is called out. And I take personal issue with an experience that my mother had as it relates to Meredith. When I brought light to that, a lie was told that my mother was transphobic as a way of diversion from the issue. My mother hashed out the situation and how it happened, and I believe there was a case of misgendering that occurred, but it wasn't from my mother, and it wasn't intentional. And my mother just simply stated what someone had said to her about how, when she heard Meredith be disrespectful to my mother's child, me, they were just surprised that my mom did not go off in a fashion that a parent would go off to defend their child. Since that incident happened, and since talking about it publicly, even Kristen rallied to the defense of Meredith on it and was like, well, you both don't like each other. And I'm like, I will never like a racist, so you will never have to worry about that. Shoring up from my side. And I was in Arapahoe County, working in Arapahoe County before these two parties were. And I'm like, well, shit, if this happens to me, how would a less seasoned, less involved Black person be treated? And why should they stay in the party? In 4 years, when we've known that, I'm giving it 4 years, we've known it for a lot longer, there has really been no specific outreach done to Black people. When I've even brought up the idea, I'm like, well, maybe go to the churches where I know that's a good hot spot. It's an idea of, well, churches have been homophobic and churches are this and that, so we're not going to go there. But then it completely cuts away from when we say that people need to go to where populists are in order to bring them in. So I don't know, right? I mean, I judge things off of actions more so than I judge things off of what I hear. And the environment in Arapahoe County is often toxic and unwelcoming to non-white people, but specifically Black people. So I don't know what work has really been done to correct that issue.
Yeah, so, well, Meredith, I'll let you address this first if you'd like to.
Well, the specifics of the issue, I called Sandra and I apologized. That was a personal journey for me to understand exactly what had happened and why. That's one of those examples of trying to understand why I reacted I did in a particular instance. And I was wrong, and I own that. So I reached out to the aggrieved party and I offered my apologies, which she was gracious enough to accept. What she mentioned about that kind of environment being created and that toxicity that can be created is something that I've thought about a lot. And I think he's right to bring that up. The environment we create through small actions, through minor bits, and then that gets amplified through personal relationships can often have these kinds of knockoff effects that people are not intending or aren't aware of at the time. And how we engage in this work without hurting each other consistently and without fraying relationships with each other consistently is one of the challenges I think that any kind of diverse coalition building is always going to be facing. I don't know, again, like I said, I don't know a systemic way to solve that. I only know that I have to consistently interrogate my own motivations and actions and do my best to atone when I do wrong, listen to people when they tell me that, and then offer my own interpretation and my own feedback when I have been wronged in turn. And that has to be a personal commitment and try to avoid it getting to a spot where, say, I won't speak to an individual ever again. That's unfortunate because that weakens the movement. And I don't want to see that happen. So I think that Hashem is right to point out that there can be that perception, and that perception has not been intentional, but that doesn't mean it's not real. And so what we can do to start like walking that back, to build the outreach, I'm very much open to that.
And I would just like to add that, like, I understand why that Black churches are a place of celebration and community. I also think like it is a tricky situation to just invite yourself to a church. Like, I have a lot of I try to go to things that I am invited to. I try to support organizations where I'm invited, and also one of the ways that I think I connect with diverse Democrats is by knocking on doors and hearing about the things directly that people care about, not politicos, but actual like Democratic voters. And like, honestly, like most of the work that is legally, the party is legally bound to do is not fulfilling. And sometimes I wonder why I keep showing up when the environment is hostile towards me. Like,
I gotta just, and I'm not on the chat, so I don't know if this has already been thought of, but it's like running for office is already scary enough. We all can agree to that, even those that have not run. It's already scary enough, and then to come to the Democratic offices and to then be confronted with, if it was on purpose or not, but maybe some type of maybe misunderstanding or internal hostility. Imagine how hard. Imagine the candidates that have been turned away just based on that. Imagine the talent that was out there that got turned away because there was miscommunication, lack of communication, or maybe you said exactly what you felt and that was bad.
Let me amplify it real quick, Mike.
Go ahead.
Let me amplify it because, and this will, to me, this actually makes it even more pertinent about when Adam Fong dropped out and left the party. when I was a candidate, I felt those pressures as well. There was a financial crisis I had where I'm like, look, I think I need to drop out just so I can keep my car, and on top of the personal, emotional, and mental stress, right? Then I won, and I'm so happy. And that night, we went to a celebration party with the party, right? At that Mexican restaurant, we had tequila, we had margaritas and whatnot. And I was still in campaign mode because the campaign just ended like within the last couple of hours. I went and worked the room. I'm shaking hands happily, just trying to meet members of the party. And this has nothing to do with either of you. There were about 10 people in that room that refused to shake my hand, refused to make eye contact with me, refused to, and look, I'm 6'7", guys, you can't really tell. In our Democratic Party, I don't know their names. I probably wouldn't recognize them right now if I saw them, but there was about 10 people. And, being from the South, being from an area where Ku Klux Klan is operating like literally right outside of my neighborhood, I'm really used to cold, hard, old school races, that in-your-face races. But I experienced that in the midst of our party. So it is a little, when I talk about systemically and how we can address this, is not because, Meredith, I heard about the incident that happened with you and I just want to pin it to you. We need to talk about that. I'm glad you're willing to own up to it as much as you have. But, you're a different generation. We still got some old school, old style racism, that straight up Colorado Springs Ku Klux Klan Foundation racism, that is still operational in the Democratic side, and it's right here in our county. So we need to think of a system that we can address this, because I let it roll off of my back because that was a really big night. I wasn't going to let them steal my joy. But at the same time, I still remember that. I'm going to be out of office here in a couple months, but I still remember that. And that it's not over after you win the campaign. The campaign's over, but the problems within the party aren't over. So let's talk more about this. Let this be an ongoing conversation. That's a dope black thought before we try to close out. This needs to be an ongoing conversation.
Yeah, and I guess like my whole thing is, obviously overt racism is one thing. I think there are clearly hostilities and microaggressions and aggressions that come out. I think it is a mixture of personal relationships and building strong enough relationships so that someone can say, hey, Meredith, that was really messed up. Like, let's dissect this and understand where that's coming from and figure out how to make amends. I think, at the end of the day, it is still a volunteer organization, and some of the people that I've seen be the worst offenders are very heavily embedded in the state party, because the state party also relies on their free labor and expertise. And when I came in with fresh blood to run the party, I thought, well, I'm gonna I'm gonna try to get folks who are problematic out of positions of power. I couldn't do it. I wish I could, but I couldn't. And that's where it's complicated. It's complex because a lot of this is baked into this oppressive system. And so we're trying to make this system that wasn't built for people like me, wasn't built for people like Kevin, wasn't built for people like Adam, work for us. And I do think we need to keep talking about it. I think we need to keep hearing from folks like Kevin, from folks like Hashem when something goes wrong so that we can address it. But I also understand that people are human and people are going to make mistakes. And as long as people are willing to be held accountable, to make amends where they can and to do better, that's the bar. Because if we throw people out or we cancel people who are problematic, in instances, not overall, we would have nobody, right? Let the perfect person throw the first stone. And I think that's what's complicated. Yeah.
So, and it is complicated, but that's often a default that people go to excuse and to whitewash the behavior of the instance that happened. Yes, understand that we all have some dis to our function, but understand that it's a spectrum and that measurement should be based upon the actions that are taken to lessen the harm. That's when you can say, let he who was out stone cast the first, or he was out sin cast the first stone. But before I got cut off, I just wanted to address the part that was said about church, and here I go defending church. So imagine this shit, right?
It's a new world, brother. It's a new world issue.
But I'm about being honest and factual. Anyone, in my experience of 21 plus years in Colorado, 45 years in Colorado, and of attending church, is welcome to attend a church. It doesn't matter your affiliation, as long as you're respectful, as long as you're not like the racist that went into the church and murdered the 9 black people, or you're not like one of the ones that did the church bombing. You're welcome to come into the church, and that is a part. And I've said this before. That is how you begin to build those relationships, by going to those events of community. I mean, people go to all this other stuff of all of the communities, but for some reason, when it comes to the black church, it's like, I'm good. And that should not be the case. There's no conversion that happens in the black church. It's people go and they like it. Sometimes I'm people, but so that's that issue. The other issue, and I might have missed it as well, what is being done to help rectify the issue of racism in the Arapahoe County Dems party?
Either one of
I
you?
would let Kristen speak to that, but she just dropped off. So I can tell you what we have done briefly, which is try to bring as many of our officers and leaders into as many trainings as we can to make sure that these issues are brought to light and a framework for understanding them is imparted. I think the generation that Kristen was talking about, the generation that Kevin was talking about, the framework for understanding systemic racism is just very poor at best. So there's an educational component that has to happen there. And then that's the first step.
Let me interject right quick, because that generation wasn't always old, right? There was oftentimes in that generation was the same age as the folks in leadership now. So also understanding that, and I'm going to bring it up, an issue of Nicole Johnson. I am a friend of Nicole Johnson's. I am a friend of other council members as well. But when I spoke about understanding and looking at what she did from a pragmatic sense or from a human sense, then I'm vilified and I'm told that this white woman is manipulating my small black mind. This is Hashem paraphrasing. And I don't understand how to identify racism. When I talk about how the so-called progressive 3 refused to support Angela Lawson to be mayor pro tem, I'm told I don't get it. And I'm like, wait a minute. Like, this is anti-blackness at the first step. But I'm told I don't get it. And I'm told that I'm wrong. And I'm like, okay. I guess my lived experience, my educational experience doesn't even matter as it relates to topics like that. So I hear a lot of lip service when we say that we are bringing these party leaders in for trainings and whatever. Like, there should be something measured, something better, right? I mean, yes, I know it's not going to be solved overnight or even in my generation time. But
so I jumped in and out of that conversation a little bit because of my connection. But I do just want to acknowledge, like, Hashem, your thoughts around it are valid, but also other people of color, Latino people who say, like, white women harmed me, their lived experiences are also valid. And I think,
they are.
Right. So I think we have to honor both things. And this is where I say, like, relationships are messy. Politics is messy. And it's not always going to be clean cut. Like, it's not always not. Right. But
when there's a point of either we let the people in, the woman that we call the white supremacist, have the mayor pro tem seat, or we vote for the black woman who we have some issues with. But I'm going to stand back because I've been harmed and my friend has been harmed and I'm not going to vote. And so now Francois is the mayor pro tem. And in essence, all the work that was done during the summer of protest, gone.
Right.
But that's okay because I stood on my values as a purist.
Well, I also don't think, I don't think anyone's saying it's okay, but I also think that, like, we haven't had a real conversation on why white women and Angela Lawson refused to support Crystal Murillo.
Okay, so let's break that down. So when that happened,
about her leadership.
So everybody on council lies. Everybody on council lies.
I agree with.
And when that breakdown happened, and when the infraction in the bylaws or in the rules happened after Crystal did not make the vote. So there was an opportunity to go back to that point of where that infraction happened. And it was just Angela and Francois that would have been in the race. The energy was like, yeah, we're still going to not let Francois have it. Yikes.
Right. And I will say, so this is like also very complicated because this really has nothing to do with the parties, but it has to do with electeds and their decisions and their moral compasses. Like there's a lot that happens.
No,
yes,
I disagree.
Absolutely.
Because no, not when you have party leadership rallying off against Angela Lawson, party leadership. Rallying off against Black women, Angela Lawson rallying off against former Dems that left the party because of the treatment that they received, right? Like, so when all this shit broke down and happened, it was Leanne Wheeler and Angela Lawson, two Black women, right, who were disrespected. Democrats. I don't give a fuck what they are. There were two Black women that were listen, pause the whiteness. I'm going to finish. Two Black women were disrespected by party leadership. Was that ever addressed?
Okay, so can I respond?
Was that ever addressed?
The Democratic Party supports Democratic candidates and Democratic people. So am I going to address not supporting Angela Lawson, who was a Republican and is now unaffiliated, or Leanne Wheeler, who is unaffiliated? Am I going to address that as Democratic Party chair? No, I am not. There are different organizations that advocate specifically for Black people, and those leaders have different roles. I have my role is to advocate for elected Democrats.
So,
cool. And non-elected,
and no one's talking
Democrats.
about from an electoral position. Even if you don't advocate for them, because they happen to not be registered Democrats, does that give party leadership carte blanche to be anti-Black and disrespectful towards them? Like they were reduced down to I just hate that I can't remember the specific quote that Meredith launched against Angela Lawson, but shit, it made me jump up and defend her former Republican self, right? Purely on the fact of we don't disrespect Black people. I don't allow that to happen. Not on my watch. And you know how I feel about Angela Lawson. She knows how I feel about her, right? I don't agree with all of her votes, but at the end of the day, if you are party leadership, if you want Black folks to come into the party, you can't disrespect our Black people and hide under the thing of, well, they're not Democrats. Cool. Nobody's asking you to support their race.
I guess I'll speak to this. When people vote with unfortunate and harmful actions and cause harm, then I will not be supporting them, and I will say so on times, especially if they're not Democrats. I don't regard people who are not Democrats as being people who I'm obligated to respect, irrespective of what's going on otherwise. Angela Lawson has cast harmful votes. I will have no problem saying that. She has caused damage to the people of Aurora. And I wish she hadn't, but she has. And I will call that out. My role is to get policy passed that will help the people of Aurora. And do that through electoral politics, through electing people who are going to cast better votes. And that's what I'm hoping to do at every hour that I am working at this. People
Angela
who will
Lawson,
not cast votes to harm people.
Friend of the show. You know what? The last two episodes, we've been calling people out by name.
No. Hashem, I got a question. I got this question, and I want Hashem. She's the Arapahoe County Democratic chair, right?
Yeah.
And you're holding her responsible for the actions of non-Democrats who have been elected.
No.
Well, I'm asking the question. I'm
I'm going to stop you now. I'm not holding her. I'm stopping you now. I'm not holding her responsible. I'm not holding her responsible for Angela's actions.
Okay. But are you holding her responsible for the votes?
No.
Or the actions of those council members?
So let me be clear again.
Okay.
when you have Arapahoe County elective leadership being anti-Black in their critique of someone, whether they're Democrat or not, it's a problem.
Yes.
It's a problem. It's never acceptable in my book for that to happen. That is the issue that I'm having. I have issues with Angela Lawson and how she votes, right? Cool. But I also have a respect for her as a person and as a Black woman. Like, it just, that's how Blackness operates, right? We've been a chew on the meat type of, take the meat, throw away the bone type of people since we've been stolen from our country and brought here. And then when I hear, like, I can be disrespectful to someone, or I don't have to respect them, or I can address them however I want to because of the harm that they've caused, well, cool. So now we have 3 people that allowed a white supremacist to take the seat of mayor pro tem. They deserve that same treatment. You know, when I talked to Angela about it, she was like, you need to talk to Coombs, who lied about a vote that was supposed to come up. And I'm like, yo, this shit just becomes so silly to me from everybody on council. At the end of the day, like, I'm annoyed at it. I'm annoyed with them all.
I understand that annoyance. I share a lot of that annoyance. I also think that, like, we can keep like talking about the mayor pro tem thing specifically, or we can try to get candidates who are willing to continue to talk to each other and to collaborate and to have difficult conversations and create a stronger caucus. I mean, that to me is the solution. And I think that that's what we're working on this year with the people that we're running. They don't always agree on everything, but they have committed to treat each other with respect, to talk through the issues, and to, like, understand that politics is complicated, and we're gonna work as a caucus through this. And I don't think that that's how it was in the past. We have to try to build something stronger. So, and I also apologize, but my family is here to pick me up from the airport, so I'm gonna have to wrap it up. I'm so sorry.
And I want to be clear that I'm not talking about the mayor pro tem issue. I'm talking about the anti-Blackness issue. And it just happened to be around the mayor pro tem issue.
One thing I would suggest, though, Kristen, just from my board experience, we have a self-evaluation process. As a matter of fact, we're going to do it at our next meeting. You can tune in, where we just answer a questionnaire publicly and we speak about, hey, are we doing a good job at this? And each one of us gives our own assessment of it. Especially now we're changing our governance model. Like, we're just looking at what we do and just saying, hey, does anyone have an issue with what's going on? And I know if it's the same people, doing it, of course they're going to get, hey, I evaluate myself when I pass. But it makes you have to take a stance publicly. You're in a meeting where someone can say something against that if you do it at a meeting where there's spectators and whatnot. So that's also just another.
I would love to look at that survey and implement something similar. I mean, we have started the process to have tough conversations. We've started the process, like, we had Reagan Burden. I think self-reflection and feedback is critical ongoing. And I do take the notes. Hashem, let's continue the conversation on anti-Blackness. I don't want to shut that down because I think that that's embedded in most white people. And just to be frank, like, I don't fully understand where you're coming from yet, but I want to.
Okay, so let's do this out of respect to your family and your ride and Meredith and y'all's time. Let's go ahead and let y'all go. I want to say thank you for coming on the show. We're gonna take a second, kind of debrief. We're already over time anyway, so we might as well just chat about it amongst the show. So thank you so much, Kristen. Thank you so much, Meredith. We'll see you guys later.
Have a good night.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Peace. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. And then,
yo. This ain't no after show, so I can't just get comfortable yet, right?
no. Couple of things. I guess we did say yes to emceeing. DBT just said yes. I said yes for you, Hashem. Don't worry about it. I'll fill you in.
You ain't got to. I've been there before we even knew who you were.
Speaking of who I am,
coming in hot.
Shout out, Kevin Cox, Hashem. Carter for Kids is up and running, and I have been endorsed by the Teachers Union. I'm ready to go. So,
hey, now that's a big one. Endorsed by the Teachers Union. So, talk about that process. How do you get endorsed by the Teachers Union? What's that mean?
I thought we were going to debrief. Why are we going to talk about Michael?
You know,
No, we're not going to discuss that. We're not going to discuss that. We got other
Hey, the
stuff to
control
deal
room
with.
just logged in. All right.
We're not going to discuss any of that right now. We still got other stuff to deal with. With respect to that, is there?
I was trying to cut you off before your daddy showed up.
I don't
and now
have.
y'all
I
in
don't
trouble.
have signal. I told you guys I have no signal. You guys got to give me something before your daddy showed up.
All right. So
This is a signal.
I got no signal.
So no, Stefania said still live. Yes, we know we're
What
live.
happened to-
Yeah,
All right.
we know. We know.
I just felt like there's some stones not fully turned over yet in this aspect, and so I guess the question is at least terms for the folks who are watching, what's the next steps? Do we bring it back? Do we rediscuss? I know we've had some other candidates who have requested to come on the show as well. What's the family's feeling?
Candidates regarding
City Council.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would love to hear from them, especially with what's going. That's me. That is Paperboy / Short Texas / Carter for Kids. Own personal opinion. I'd love to hear from all of the city council candidates, but
You're about to not have a personal opinion, so start getting used to that.
Exactly.
yeah, I know. I'm getting it cut off. I'm getting it cut
Yeah,
off.
you're getting the cut off. But I'm gonna be free, and I think that we should bring them on because everybody has a story. And I'll reach out again to Councilwoman Lawson. And I apologize for not giving her title respect, and also for the other council members for not giving them their title respect. And that's just proximity of relationship. But I charge it to my head, not to my heart. But I'll reach out to her to see if she'd be interested in coming on. Or she just might be like, I'm sick of talking about this mess.
And what about John Juan Keogh?
Friend of the show, bring him back. We can bring everybody on, even if they're not a friend of the show.
Just candidates, of course.
Yeah, Ruben Medina, it's Crystal Murillo. Let's bring them on if they're willing to join the hot seat.
Of course they are. Of course they are. No, definitely we need to bring them on. I mean, that's not a question about that. So we just need to get that worked out logistically.
We're still live.
What's up? You trying to go off?
I'm about to say we're going off.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
See you. Man, I'm about to go enjoy that.
What is love? Is the drug. Let it rotate, then hit back in it. Calling me an Uber just to hit back in it. You the cash out like fake, I send it. Is it really worth the wait? I don't get it.